All right, folks, I think we are back. Sorry about that. Hopefully, now the audio is even better. I hope. So, yeah, sorry about that. I'm just going to wait for folks to come back in, and hopefully, they will. Or maybe they won't. All right, Sean Aaron is here. Hello, mate. Good to see you. I'm going to see if I can try and change this dialog box without it getting stuck again. No, it's going to get fudging stuck again. I look lost, do I? No, I've just got issues with streaming. It's messing me about much more than normal. Like I've got this dialog box that just won't go away. It gives you an option to either show top chat or live chat, and I click live chat and nothing happens, and the dialog box just stays on the screen. It's very annoying. So this might be the world's worst and the world's shortest stream, so I apologize. Yes, I'm back, and hopefully I sound better because I'm coming through this now instead of the mic over there. So we got 5 people in, and this is a little bit last minute. This is totally unplanned. I basically got a call from Johnny, and he said, "Can you do something just to fill the gap?" I'm probably, and he tells me he's going to do his show at 8:00. So I said, "Yeah, sure. I will fill in a little bit of a gap for maybe, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that." So I'm going to delete the other stream once we've come off this one, and hopefully all will be good. And yes, I'm a little bit scruffy today. I probably look completely scruffy as well. So I'm sorry about that. Unfortunately, I can't change my default chats unless maybe if I pop that out, maybe that'll change it. If I change that to live chat. Ah, there we go. That works. That works. Oh no. Have I fixed it? I'm not even sure whether I fixed it. I just don't know anymore. So I think what I will do is I will cheat and I'll put the chat over there. There we go. I'm cheating. You fixed it. Yes, I did fix it. Yeah, I just needed to change the mic. For some reason, when you use the new camera thing that YouTube have set up where you can just live stream straight from your webcam, which is what I'm doing right now, it's not perfect. There are some issues that YouTube need to fix. So, yeah, there it is. But this is kind of like the worst problems I've had. So Mike says I look lost. Yes, I do. I do. Well, I look kind of scruffy. Yeah, I know. I've just been a lazy fart bag and not shaved in a day. This is 24 hours worth of growth, folks. Bobby says, should we try for take 3? Shall we? Maybe, I don't know. Provided we don't have any more problems with this, then yeah, we'll be fine. But what I've done to fix that little dialog box thing, the dialog box thing was with the chat. So to deal with that, I basically there's an option to pop it out. So I popped out the chat, and the chat is in another window now, and that seemed to have made it go away. Martin says, time to sing Jay Giles. I must have got lost somewhere down the line. I don't know. Just Bob is here. I hope you enjoyed the show, my friend, because I know you're at a Judas Priest show. Was it last night? He says, hey, I know you're not into Judas Priest and that type of music, but what do you think of the musicianship of the guitarists, solos and stuff? Yeah, they're great musicians. Absolutely no doubt about that. There's yes, absolutely no doubts about the musicianship whatsoever. It's just not really my thing. You know, some of you will not appreciate John Coltrane and just think that his music is just, you know, yeah, it gets into your head. I know there are people like that. They just can't handle Coltrane. It's just too complex, and they just can't handle it. It's just not really their thing. But there's no doubt about the fact that John Coltrane was probably the greatest tenor sax player until Michael Brecker. So But, you know, I certainly appreciate the musicianship in the band. No doubt about that. John Anderson says, so can I share something? I've started using your way of mixing, gain stage and buses first, then get a good dry mix, then focusing on any changes needed on the tracks. Much better results and quicker. Yes, it is. It is definitely a faster mixing methodology. And it took me a lot of years to actually get to it before I thought, oh, actually, if I do it backwards, it's faster. If I think about the end result first and then work backwards through that process, what I end up with at the end is much better. David Rudder is here. He says, g'day, possums. G'day, mate. Hope you're having a fantastic day down there in Australia. My Australian accent needs work. I'm aware of that. But I do try. I have Australian relatives. So, you know, I can do a variety of different accents, and I do a vaguely Australian accent. And I can really nail it a little bit better when my Australian relatives are around or I'm talking to them on Skype. So, yeah. So there we go. So I'm really glad, John, that that reverse mixing methodology works for you. Works for me too. David Rudder says, just been watching a video about using pink noise to balance mixes. Yeah, there's a lot of people that do that, and there's a lot of people that actually they swear by it, that pink noise really does it. Pink noise gives me a headache, so I use it as little as possible. I used it to calibrate my monitors, and that's about it. And the sooner I could get it turned off, the better. To me, the noise, they call it pink noise, but to me, it's not pink. To me, it's kind of maybe purple, but certainly not pink. But that's a whole nother subject that is quite complex, and you probably wouldn't believe me anyway. So, Martin says, since I first learned guitar from bluegrass pickers, harmonica from James Cotton and locals in DC and R&B, etc., etc., I appreciate all musicianship, even if it's not my thing. Yes. You know, one thing I have tried never to be in my entire life is I have tried never to be a musical snob of any kind, because it's just counterproductive and it's arrogant at the end of the day. Musical snobbery is arrogant. It's the height of arrogance, and you need to stop it. So, you know, I mean, even within the jazz music community, there's a lot of snobbery. Like, unless you are playing strictly Duke Ellington and that style and that period of jazz music, anything else is not jazz. So if you're playing funk, if you're playing, you know, jazz fusion music, it's not jazz. If you're playing bebop, it's not jazz. You know, there are people that are like that. I'm just like, no, shut up. For jazz, all you need is rhythm, harmony, and improvisation. You have jazz. Martin says, I use a bit of everyone for what I do. I approach songs like Kali Constructs, Attention to Gain Stage like Johnny and Johnny, bussing from all of you, and top-down mixing from others. I do a bit of all. Right, that's cool. That's very cool. Woodbeast is asking, I think, Beatrice, have you been all right? Let's see. Only 3 likes. Well, you know what? This was a completely unplanned stream, David. So, you know, I'm basically just talking to you guys. That's all I'm doing. And I don't intend to do this all night, by the way, guys. So, but I'm happy to take questions, and we can talk about mixing methodologies and that kind of stuff, seeing as those are the kind of things that you guys have already brought up. Happy to talk about that in a bit more detail. And Mike is saying it's snowing outside my window right now. You're kidding? Again? In the middle of April? Oh my gosh. Fortunately, I think I'm not quite at that point where I'm ready to put money on it. But I think here in Scotland, it's certainly the central part of Scotland. I think we are finally done with snow. The Central Belt, I think, is finally done with snow. Up north, you get snow quite a lot of winter. Well, pretty much all of winter, and quite a lot of spring. You get snow, and then summertime it's not so bad. But that's up north. I don't live up north. I'm in the Central Belt on the East Coast. So yeah, snow I think we're done with. But I really cannot remember a time when we've had snow like we've had, like a winter that has started late and then finished well into spring. It's crazy. So I'm hoping that bodes well for a really long summer that is going to be hot and dry, and I can go on the beach with my kids. Jared is here. Good to see you, mate. He says, I want to use my Studio Live 32 with Studio One Pro to use plugins with a live band. What are your thoughts? You want to use plugins with a live band? You mean you want to track straight through the board into Studio One and use plugins in Studio One as you're recording? Okay. Yeah, you can use Capture, and you can use Capture to record that way. You can certainly do that. And then you can run it into Studio One after the fact, and you can use your Studio Live using DAW mode if you wish. That would be the way that I would do it, but he says no recording, just for plugin effects live. Yeah, I don't think you can do that, because you'd have to put the plugins on the inserts. And then you're gonna encounter some latency, I would think. I mean, it's not something I've tried, because my Studio Live does not leave my studio. I don't take this out for live shows at all, because I'm not a live sound mixer, really. Skip says you can use your Series 3 boards plugins live. Yes, you can use the onboard plugins live. Yes, I'm sure about that. But I don't know personally. I don't know about using the Studio One plugins live. I don't know about that. Skip may well know a little bit better about that. Jared says my test so far work. Yeah, using the Studio Live Fat Channel plugins, yes, you can use those live, absolutely. Because it is essentially, the Studio Live mixers are essentially a live mixer. So yes, you can use the Fat Channel EQs and all of that stuff, and compressors and all of that stuff, and the analog reverbs and delays that are in on board as well. You can use those. I just don't know about using your actual Studio One plugins live. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. Martin is being sinister. I don't know whether he's intending to be or whether he's just joking. Perry Brenning says global warming and then laughs. Well, actually, if you follow, I mean, this is completely off topic. My dad is an environmental scientist, and he knows more about this subject than most people. Mostly because he's written papers on it. But actually, what we're seeing in terms of extreme weather is actually dead on for the global warming model. Absolutely. That totally fits. Totally fits. Just because we are experiencing extreme cold weathers and we're having snowstorms does not mean that global warming is not happening. There's, that's a false correlation to make. And my dad is an expert in the field, and he and I have talked a lot on the subject, and as I say, he's written papers on it, so he knows more about it than most people. He's also a fantastic guitar player. So anyway, we're going to keep this to music and not to discussing the merits or not of the argument for or against global warming. Is global warming cyclical? We don't know. Essentially, we do not know. Evidence at the moment is unsure, but it may well not be, but we don't know. Jared says, I used a Waves plug-in with no noticeable latency live in testing. Well, you know what? If you're finding it working, then it works. Are you putting the Waves plugin on the inserts of the channels, or are you putting them on the, are you putting them on the inserts of your channels in the top of Studio One on the mixer, or are you putting them on the inputs, which is what I meant to say earlier? Are you putting the Waves plugin on the inputs, or are you putting them on the inserts on the channels? Woodby says, I used your ideas in the final version of that song. Oh, that's great. So you guys are collaborating on song, which is fantastic. Jared is back. He says, I had to stop out for a second. Well, that's fine. That's no problem. We have 22 people here. I think you missed this, so I'll try again, not spamming. It could just be the delay in the chat here. Let me just check what's going on here. Let me just check, David. In Studio One, when automating tracks, you click the line to create a point you can manipulate to set values. Do you know how to bring up the option to type in the values? Good question. I don't do a whole lot of automation. And to be honest, I don't actually type in values for automation. I insert points and then I click and I just drag the line up and down, or I write it using my fader port or the Studio Live. I don't tend to type in specific values. I would much rather use a fader to do it. Bobby says it's buffering. Okay. If anyone else confirms that, then I apologize, and there's not a lot I can do about it. Just Bob says, how do you fade one song out and fade the next song in on one track? Would it be two tracks remixed down to one? In other words, how can you combine two separate stereo mixdowns into one track? You can do that using the project page if you are a Studio One professional user. You can just, you can do that. You can have crossfades between the songs. Dead easy. If you are not, then what you may well have to do is bring each mix down into Studio One. If you're like using Studio One Artist, for example, you bring each mix down in as a stereo file into Studio One, put it on a track, and then line the next one right up next to it, and then you can do X, and you can expand the crossfades as much as or as little as you want. And that's how you do it. The problem you're going to encounter there is if you have different songs that are at a different tempo, then the session tempo is going to be an issue. But if you in the inspector change that so that it's not going to follow the tempo, then you won't have that problem, I don't think. David says, too difficult to get precision dragging, then point with a mouse. Well, yeah, if you've got a fader port or a Studio Live mixer, you can do it with a fader. Much, much easier, to be honest. And you can probably use the zoom as well. If you're looking at the event view, bottom left corner, you can use the zoom so you can make the tracks bigger. And that should make your automation lanes bigger as well. And then, of course, you can hold down Shift on your keyboard, on your computer keyboard, and then you can drag up, and you can get you can make very, very minute changes doing it that way. Bobby's obviously having problems. I do apologize, Bobby. He says, bye, guys. You know what, folks? If you are getting buffering, please refresh the stream and come back in. If that doesn't do it, then I don't know what the problem is at your end. So, yeah, sorry about that. He says he refreshed. Okay. Yeah, well, you just have to keep trying it. It could be you've got internet connectivity problems at your end. Your internet might have just slowed down. There could be a server problem in your neighborhood. I certainly experienced that before, where YouTube might actually be running very slow in a different region of the world, and then running fine here. So, let's keep going through this. David Rudder says, yes, Zoom. Cheers. That's a good tip. Yeah, I'll hope that helps. Give that a try and let me know how you get on with that. Just Bob says, cool, thanks. I want to put two songs together, much like Leg Zepp, Living, Loving, Made. I have not experienced any buffering. Cool. Okay. Well, Bobby says it could be YouTube. It could be YouTube in your locality, not necessarily YouTube in the global sense. Because other people is saying in the chat here that they have clear picture and audio and not any problems. Pat Flex says right click and type in values. That is definitely another way to do it. Jared confirms no buffering. So that's cool. So we've got 25 people here. That's cool. Yep, could be your internet service provider. Absolutely, David. Spot on. Another good observation. That's what it could be. Skip says just spank it, refresh. Yes. Send a nasty email to your ISP. Say it's not good enough. Woodby says YouTube and Facebook are in trouble. Facebook certainly are, because Mark Zuckerberg is facing a congressional hearing. Got some idiot Facebooking me. They can go away. NCIS had slaps work too. Yes. Yeah, YouTube. I think they were only in trouble because somebody tried to take advantage of monetizing so they can monetize something that is very, very bad and desperately evil and despicable. And they tried to monetize that. And for whatever reason, that particular video went viral. And I think it was a little bit clickbaity. Skip says, if you don't shave soon, it's going to hurt. No, it's not. It'll take me about 10 minutes to get rid of this and about 10 minutes to grow it back again. But that's because I am just ridiculously hairy. There is not a lot I can do about that. It is a hereditary issue. Yeah, so I don't think YouTube are particularly in as much trouble as Facebook are. Facebook are in a huge amount of doo-doo. Mark Zuckerberg is in a massive amount of doo-doo. Let's see. Just Bob says beard is becoming on you. Yeah, I don't like it. I like the goatee is fine, but everything else, no. No thanks. Perry Brenning says, do you use a keyboard controller for MIDI? And if so, which one? This guy here. This is the Yamaha QS300, manufactured in 1994. Still works like a charm, even though it has fallen out of the back of a van and onto the freeway. Well, what you guys would call freeway. We call it motorway here. I nearly got run over by a truck, but I dived out of the car and ran straight into a very busy motorway with cars coming at me at 70 miles an hour and faster, grabbed the keyboard and ran back off the motorway. Yes, I nearly got myself killed for the sake of my keyboard. Thing is, it's fine. There's only like one sensor, I think, under here that doesn't work properly. Martin says, can you show us how to set up different tempos for different songs in the Inspector? I cannot share my screen at the moment because I am not using... I'm not streaming the normal way. I'm using YouTube Camera because this was last minute and I just wanted to get straight live as quick as I could. So I'm not using Google Hangouts, so I cannot share my screen, I'm afraid. But hold that question, Martin, and we can look at that on Sunday. Okay. If you hold that question, we'll get that straight in first up. Okay. Stereo Lab is here. Good to see you, mate. I'm very glad you're here. And you ask, is that Nord an Electro and what version? It is the Nord. I'll start that sentence again. It is the Nord Stage 88 Revision B 2006. And I got this as soon as it shipped here in the UK. As soon as it was available, I got it. Perry says, that's an awesome story. I can see you now. You dodging traffic. Oh dear God. I've got somebody who is sending me insulting Facebook messages. I will deal with them afterwards, but it's most distracting. What's Skip saying here? I'm not really sure what he's saying. Mouse or Google Hangouts? I'm not sure what you mean, Skip. Yeah, using YouTube camera, you cannot share your screen, unfortunately. I don't know why they've not included that, because it works with Google Hangouts. It's maybe just the fact that this new way of streaming is just new, and they've not really added any features there, really. Jared says, tell them to message me. Nah, I'm not going to do that. I've just been debating with somebody, and they've lost the debate, and they can't argue with me because they can't cite evidence to support their argument, and so they're having a hissy fit in my general direction because they don't like the fact that I have out-argued them, and it is game, set, and match to me. Checkmate. They are down. They are gone, and they don't like it. They haven't got the maturity to handle that, unfortunately for them. Because I know that sounds really, really arrogant, and I don't mean it to sound that way. Not at all. It's just, when somebody makes a really silly argument and then you completely floor their argument, but rather than having, the humility and the grace to admit that they're wrong, they just keep right on going. And then because they know they've lost the argument, the only thing that they have left to do is to insult you. So that's what she's doing at the moment. And then she's asking me to apologize to her for me being right. Okay. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to apologize for being right. Oh dear God, she's still flipping messaging me. One second, folks. I hate it when people do this to me. But I guess when you debate with people, this is what you get. There we go. Job done. I told her to go away. And I blocked her. There we go. Sorry about that. We will continue. What was the argument about? Oh, the argument was about you are not going to believe it. But the argument was to do with Greek lexicography, because one of the things I do, because I am, I'm a preacher, One of the things I have learned and studied is ancient Greek and ancient Hebrew, and somebody was trying to say that it's a bit of a long story, but somebody was trying to make an argument that was totally invalid. And yes, it was a woman, and yes, she was trying to intimidate me. So there you go. That's what the debate was about. The debate was about the meaning of certain Greek words, and she was not having it when it's just blatant fact, and she can't argue with it. And I even asked her just now, I said, have you studied the Greek lexicography of that passage? And she goes, no. So there you go. Martin says, oh, real Christians. Yes, I am a real Christian. Woodby says, being right is hard to prove. No, it's not. Not if you've got evidence. Not if you've got solid, irrefutable evidence to support your case. Then it becomes about actually what the person believes. So it becomes something to do with their will as opposed to what is actually true. Martin says you're referring to her. Right, okay. Yes. I don't know. I don't know whether she is or not. Did we debate via email? No, it's a Facebook theology group that I'm in. And she decided that she was going to private message me. So there you go. Do I own just the 2 keyboards? I have these. I have the Yamaha QS300. I have the Nord Stage 88 in the lounge, which is down the corridor a wee bit. There is a Fender Rhodes Stage 76, which is the Rhodes Mark 5, I think. Yeah, it's the Rhodes Mark 5 that we've got. And that lives in the lounge because there's no room for it in here. So if I want to record that, I have to put a mic in front of the speaker cab and run the cable all the way through into here. So there you go. Jared says if people could accept when they are wrong and learn from it, this world would be a much better place. Yes, absolutely. Just Bob says you're a well-schooled, a scholar, and a gentleman. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, I don't know what time it is in Central Time right now. It's probably only 7 o'clock Central Time, because the normal time that we start the show is 6, which would be midnight for me. So Martin says I spent a year living with the daughter of a Greek Orthodox priest. A lot of folks would be shocked at the differences in translations between their Bible and the modern Bible. And just Bob confirms it's 7 o'clock. Yep, there we go. Stereolab asks, any word on Studio 4? Studio 4? I don't know what Studio 4 is. I'm assuming you mean Studio 1 version 4. If there was a word on it, I would not be able to tell you. There you go. Simple answer to your question. So there we go. Moving on. Next question, please. Perry says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me, a statement of truth. That's correct. Jared says, so there is a Studio 1.4. I'm not going to answer that. David Rudder says, I almost forgot free plugins, heads up, MDA, what's that? smartelectronics.com, effects.htm. Okay. I've never heard of that company, actually. Mike Neighbor says, non-disclosure, guys. Absolutely. Yep. There is such a thing as a non-disclosure agreement, which means I do not disclose things that I am bound under agreement to. Just Bob says, would the new update that just came out potentially screw up any in-progress work? No, it shouldn't. It's still part of the Studio One 3.5 family, if you like, of updates. So it should not do any such thing. You should be fine. Penny says, thank you for staying up so late with us. Hopefully you'll be okay tomorrow. Yeah, I should be fine. I'm a late bird anyway. Frank Wagner is here. Is it Wagner or Wagner? Which do you prefer, Frank? because when I see that, I just think Wagner after the great German composer who is one of my favorite composers. You say either. Okay. Well, I say either. So let's call the whole thing off. Jared says, by the way, Joe Gilder was talking highly of you recently. Well, that's very kind of you to say so. Thank you. Yeah, Joe and I are good friends. Yeah, we've been good friends for a few years now, and it's very nice. He's a great guy. He's hilarious. He's very funny. He's very entertaining. And yeah, he's a good guy. And we talk frequently about meeting up in person. He's done it on his streams a few times where he's just like, yeah, we really need to hang out. And he's right. But, there is the small problem of the Atlantic Ocean that kind of separates us. And getting across it is expensive for both him and for me. So, but I am hoping that at some point that, either he will be able to come here or I would be able to go over there. We're not really sure which way around is going to be better. Whitby says, Jared, I have mentioned JL to Warren Hewitt as well. Yeah, Warren and I are friends as well, funnily enough. I know what some of Warren's family members, because some of Warren's family live in Cornwall, and I grew up there, so I kind of know some of his family, which is a bit of a funny one. Bob says, Robert Booth, was that with open in progress music or outside of that? I'm not sure what that discussion's about. Oh, Bobby says I had problems with the update. Okay, Bobby, what kind of problems did you have with the update? Just kind of like maybe just stick a bullet point or two in there. It is 1:06 a.m. That's right, David. Yep, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I love it. Stereo Lab says Cornwall tin mines. Yes, that is correct. There are tin, or at least there were tin and copper mines in Cornwall. Sadly, they are no more. But yeah, pretty much anything to do with tin and copper and arsenic mining was pioneered mostly in the county of Cornwall, because there was absolutely loads of the stuff. There still is. The problem was that kind of around the end of the 19th century, a lot of folks from the UK started going to South Africa, to Australia, and to Canada, and taking their mining skills over there and finding actually it's much easier and maybe more cost effective to get the tin and the copper from there rather than from here in Cornwall, from down in Cornwall. And so basically, that was that created the collapse in the price of tin and copper, and that meant the tin and copper industry down in Cornwall collapsed. And within about 50 years, 60 years, 98% of it was gone. And I think there were only two mines, South Crofty Tin Mine and Wheel Jane. Those two tin mines. In fact, I think Wheel Jane was a copper mine and South Crofty was a tin mine. They both ran until the 1990s and then they closed. But Wheel Jane reopened again, I think in 1998, as a working museum. So it's kind of like there are people that actually still go down, still do all the processes of mining, and you basically get to see mining in action. David says, don't forget Cornish pasties. Absolutely. And Skip Jones is going, pasties? Yes, Cornish pasties. Go look them up on the internet, Skip, and you'll find that they are a fabulous, fabulous food product. They're awesome. I used to eat a pasty a day, pretty much. Basically, it is meat and potato and veg all wrapped up in a pastry, which takes about 3 hours or so to actually make, if you're making it at home, like my mother used to. My mother is from here in Scotland, and I spent most of, not all of, but most of my childhood, like from about the age of 9 until 18-ish, 17, down in Cornwall, and pasties were just, pasty stores everywhere. So it's a wonderful food. Go look it up, and I think you'll find that you love it. Just Bob says, do they still mine underneath the coastline in both Scotland and England? We have oil fields in the North Sea, but not a whole lot of mining gets done here anymore. Perry's got to run. Okay, Perry, good to see you, mate. Martin says, copper mines brought Arizona out of the pit economically when the tech boom hit. Why not Cornwall? I think that's because I think a lot of Cornishmen went over to Arizona and helped create that, help make that happen. But yeah, with the price of the global price of tin and copper collapsing at the end of the 19th century like it did, it just meant that it was actually far too expensive to extract. So yeah. So the Cornish economy basically then became an agricultural economy primarily instead of an industrial economy. Woodbeast asks what my favorite dinner is where I live. Good question. Okay, that person is just back. I'm going to go and talk to her later on. What did I have for dinner tonight? I had chicken pie and chips. We call them chips. You call them fries. So yeah, that's what I had. Very, very tasty indeed, chicken pie. Traditional food, like haggis and stuff like that. No, I don't like haggis. Haggis is bleh. No thanks. But yeah, I'm not really in that sense necessarily particularly traditional. Really, probably traditional food here, particularly in Glasgow, would be something like deep fried pizza. Pretty much they deep fry everything in Glasgow. Here in Edinburgh, not quite so much, but it's actually beginning to creep across from the west coast to the east coast. Chicken pot pie. Yeah, this was basically just chicken pie in short crust pastry. It's just like chicken chunks in gravy in a short crust pastry. Delicious. David Rutter says deep fried Mars bars. Yes, we have those here. Definitely. Are there any good vegan restaurants in Edinburgh? Yes, there is. There are one or two actually that rate very, very highly. Frank Wagner asks, how local TV station do you have? How many local? Well, we have something called Freeview here, which before we had Freeview, we had basically just five channels. We had BBC channels, BBC One, BBC Two, and then an independent channel called ITV, independent television. Then Channel 4, which was meant to be kind of artsy and that kind of thing, ended up not really being. And then Channel 5 was meant to be kind of sports and current affairs orientated, and ended up being a bit more kind of. We imported a lot of American drama shows like NCIS, CSI, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, Law and Order Criminal Intent. All of those we had, and all of the CSIs, and they're all on Channel 5. Plus American sports like ice hockey, baseball, basketball. They get basically we Channel 5 managed to buy the rights to NHL broadcasts through ESPN, and I used to love sitting up late at night after working in the studio. And when I was living in London and I worked in London, I'd work in a studio on a street called Boundary Row, and it's Boundary Row Studios, and I'd work there, and I'd get home and it'd be like 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd sit and watch an ice hockey game until I fell asleep. I used to love that, but unfortunately they lost the rights to it, so there we go. But Freeview basically provides us with a whole bunch of other channels. So we have about 40 or 50 channels via Freeview, plus you can get satellite as well. So there you go. Just Bob says, from my upbringing, I have learned from my elders that what was poor people's food became what is now a delicacy. Yeah, there is that kind of thing going on. Woodbeast asks, have I ever had a Nathan's hot dog? No, I don't believe so. Let's see. Let's see. What am I missing? Okay, I can see a conversation going on there. That's fine. Woodby says we have kosher hot dogs here in Baltimore that are killer good. Yes, we have kosher hot dogs here too, which is great. I will eat either. So, because, I have a particular ethnic background. So, right, where are we? 1:15, and we've got 16 people. We did have 25, so we've lost quite a few because we've kind of just started talking about all sorts of things instead of talking about music and music production. So we probably need to just steer it back. Speaking of Scottish bands, who remembers Horslips and Marillion? Marillion, definitely I remember. Just Bob asks, what is the rule of fifths exactly? Rule of fifths? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. We have the cycle of fifths, which basically goes through flat keys one side, sharp keys on the other. But I'm not sure what you mean, unless you're talking about. You could be talking about Bach chorale harmony, maybe. Not really sure what context you mean. And basically, Bach chorale harmony states that you must avoid parallel fifths and parallel octaves. So basically, any voice within a chorale that moves in fifths or octaves is to be avoided. So, if you have a C and a G and a C major chord, and then you move that up, and so the C and the G become a D and an A, that's to be avoided. So, because it kind of creates a weakness in the harmony, apparently. And I learned all of that stuff, and then I learned that actually sometimes parallel fifths and parallel octaves can be incredibly powerful. And then I also learned that even though Bach invented that rule about parallel fifths and parallel octaves, he quite often broke his own rule, and there would be one or two parallel fifths discreetly tucked between beautiful counterpoint. And either he overlooked them, didn't realize he'd done it, which is entirely possible, or he just broke his own rule deliberately. People do that. David Rudder says, went to an after-show party with the guys from Horselip after their show at the Usher Hall. Scary, most of their guests were English-hating Scots. Yes. On that subject, I am very passionate about Scotland, very passionate about the UK, and very, very passionate about Scotland's part and place within the United Kingdom. I'm not a Scottish nationalist at all. We had an independence referendum here in 2014, and I campaigned passionately for a no to independence for Scotland, which we won. And there has fortunately not been another independence referendum since, even though our Scottish National Party keep on threatening to have another one just so that they can try and get their way. No, we're not having that. In fact, during my campaigning for against Scottish independence, I was beaten up by a gang of youths who would have been between 18 and 21. I was unhurt, fortunately. They weren't. No guns were involved. Only fists and kicks and sarcasm. Those were my only weapons, and they worked. Did I vote against Brexit? Campaign against Brexit too? Yes, I did. Woodbeast is asking, Just Bob, where are you watching Rick Beato? That guy is great. Yes, he is. He really, really knows his stuff, and I heartily recommend his YouTube channel. Go subscribe to his channel right now and click that notification bell because he has a ton of stuff on a wide variety of subjects, and is very, 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 very well worth getting into. I mean, he talks about the similarities between Bach and Charlie Parker, and talks about counterpoint and inverting a melody line and that kind of thing, which is a standard Bach practice, to invert a melody line. And it's something that is done in bebop kind of without people necessarily realizing they're doing it. David Rudder says, counterpoint works really well in trance music. It most certainly does. It really, really does. And you would think that minimalism would be the thing that works the best in trance music, but I have learned from good people such as yourself, David, that it really does work. Frank Wagner says, Just Bob, not that really hard. Basically, key jumps, G, D, A, E, B, C sharp, etc. Yes, it goes around in cycles of fifth. If I get the piano on, I can. Jared asks, you're a jazz master, but what are your thoughts on classical music? Well, I love classical music. My favorite classical composers are Beethoven is one. Mozart is another, if we're talking strictly classical period. Although Beethoven straddles the classic and romantic period, but I'm also into, the early 20th century impressionist schools, so like Debussy, Ravel, and guys like that. But I also like a little bit of Berlioz and Shostakovich and who else can I think of? Scriabin, Messiaen, Sanson. I listen to him quite a lot as well. Schoenberg, yes, Schoenberg is definitely on the list there. Stereolab, yeah. In fact, one of the things that we were asked to do at university was to write an arrangement of any particular piece of music, and we basically had to pick a style of music out of the hat that we had to do the arrangement in. So there were two hats. One was the piece of music that you were going to write an arrangement of. That's one hat. Out of the other hat was the style that you were going to write the arrangement in. So my friend Scott, who's a tremendous alto sax player, out in his piece that he had to write an arrangement of, it was the Schoenberg violin. I think it is the Schoenberg violin concerto. I think it is that he did, and the style of music. It's hilarious. The sound of music, the style of music he had to do was hilarious. He had to do a EDM arrangement of the Schoenberg the first movement of the Schoenberg violin concerto. And he's not a violin player, but and he's not really a classical guy either, but he got a first class honors award for that piece. He was really, really good. And the cool thing was that I got to perform in it as well, which is great. So it worked really well. It was a fantastic fusion because it took everything that was authentic about the Schoenberg piece and everything that was authentic about EDM and brought the two together in this fantastic, really, really cool fusion of the two. And yeah, you could go and absolutely dance your ass off to it in a club and you'd never know that it's Schoenberg. It was great. It was such a fantastic arrangement. So there we go. That's my thoughts on classical music. There's so many EDM genres. I have no idea which one slot my latest ditty into. Yeah, it's very true, actually. But you know what? Jazz is like that as well. There's so many different genres within jazz. It's ridiculous. You've got jazz funk, jazz fusion, Latin jazz, bebop, swing, traditional, um, jump music. You've got, Dixieland. Tons of different styles and different genres. You've got big band, small band, medium sized band. Um, yeah, it's cool. Cool jazz. Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna miss one or two. Hot jazz. If you're into French jazz music, gypsy jazz. Schoenberg's too avant-garde for my taste. Yeah, it's all 12-tone stuff. And the weird thing about 12-tone is it sounds like it's complete and abject nonsense, but it really isn't. There are very, very strict rules governing how you write for that, using Schoenberg's 12-tone system. David says trance music can feature vocal melodies, whereas most techno does not. That's true. Trance uses lots of layers of atmospheres and pads, whereas techno tends to use more minimal and staccato. Again, very true. The 4 on the floor kick beat is the centerpiece and pretty much the main ingredient for trance. That's very true. Again, yeah. I'm actually working with a client of mine. Actually, he's doing he decided he wanted to do a remix of an album that we did a year ago, and he said, "Yeah, I want to kind of do like a house / dance / EDM remix of his record." I'm not an EDM expert at all, so I listened to a lot of EDM, different styles of EDM before I kind of got a vibe for a particular style that was really going to fit his songs, so that the remixes didn't sound, too far-fetched, which is what you can get when you do remixes. Where it just doesn't work. The two just don't fit. Well, we kind of happened upon this particular style that kind of works for him. So yeah, lots of 4 to the floor, which comes straight out of 70s disco music. That whole sort of afterbeat hi-hat and kick drum, that comes straight out of disco music from the 1970s. What is my guilty pleasure that is not jazz, big band, etc., music style? What is my guilty pleasure? I think I've kind of talked about that, which my guilty pleasure really is kind of, if it's not classical music, then it's going to be straight up Afro-Cuban music. I listen to a lot of Afro-Cuban music and love that style. Love that kind of music, and I've read a lot of books on it. I studied under an arranger when I was studying arranging, who was his specialty was Afro-Cuban music, and so I studied a lot of the sociological history of the music as well as the musicological history of Afro-Cuban music. So yeah, that's kind of my guilty pleasure. If it's not jazz, it's going to be Latin, Afro-Cuban, or it's going to be strictly African. So we're talking West African music. I'm kind of into that as well. Kylie, no, not Kylie. Kylie has made herself a tiny fortune for what she does. She's managed to reinvent herself. I don't know how many times. Kind of a bit like Madonna has. Madonna's managed to reinvent herself a dozen times, and she retains her audience. Every time she reinvents herself, the brand is strong, so she's able to successfully rebrand herself, reinvent herself, and maintain her audience, which I think is very, very astute. So I think Kylie is either a very astute businesswoman in her own right, or she has very, very good managers who deal with that side of her. I know Madonna is a businesswoman in her own right, and she's a very clever woman. And not many people know this, but she actually started out her music career as a drummer. Did Madonna. There you go. Frank asks, what do I think of the Nashville number system for studio musicians? It's very useful, actually. It's very useful because it means that it doesn't matter what key you're playing in. If you understand how chords relate together, you're going to be able to play whatever song in whatever key. So it's great because it means you can write out a chart for a song, and then the vocalist can say, well, actually that's a little bit low for me, can we take it up a minor third? So you go, okay, that's fine. So instead of being in C, we're going to be in E flat. Okay, so that means chord 1 is now E flat. Great. We know how all the other relationships work, and it's fine. It works like that in jazz music as well. There is a school of arranging where everything is done with Roman numerals. And again, it's all about that kind of like chord 1, chord 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and all of that. So once you understand those relationships, then Nashville numbering or Roman numerals are going to work for you just fine. The thing I like about Nashville numbering is it kind of, to me, has an echo, a little bit, of figured bass from the Baroque period. Where, if you don't know what figured bass is, figured bass basically means you have a written bass part, and then below the bass note, you'd have 2 numbers, one on top of the other. The 2 numbers tell you what intervals of harmony to play above that bass note, and it tells you what interval that would be. So if you had a C and the number was 6/5, then you'd have, and then you'd have 6. So you'd be playing a C major chord, root position, or 3/5 actually. That would be, sorry. So 1, 3, 5, or 6/5 would be if 6 was at the top, it'd be 6, something like that. So the numbers stacked on top of one another told you which notes to add to it. So basically, in the Baroque period, there were no written keyboard parts, even though you had a harpsichord. In the composition, the harpsichordist improvised based on chord symbols, effectively, which was the figured bass system. So yeah, the Nashville numbers kind of have that little throwback to it, and I like that. Let's see. Martin says Miami in the 60s was a totally different culture from what it is today. Lots of classic jazz folks playing in clubs, rock and roll was open air, Joni and were regulars and so on. Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. Yeah, never been to Miami, never been actually to the West Coast. I've been to the East Coast of the United States quite a few times. Been to Washington, been to New York, been to Chicago, and Philadelphia. Been to, where else have I been to? Pittsburgh. Been to those places. Can I direct you to any good Middle Eastern drum loops, VST plugins, and strings? Good question. Not entirely sure, but you might find something if you go to looploft.com. Go there. You might find that there's some stuff there. David says, same story everywhere. Things change. Yes, they do. A lot of people have, they talk about the 60s with kind of rose-tinted spectacles quite a lot. I'm not saying, Martin, that you're doing that, but a lot of people do talk about that. If you're in Liverpool in the 60s, you go, yeah, that was the heyday when the music scene in Liverpool was extraordinary. And now it's kind of, it's not really. But you see, it's only because the music industry has changed, and the way that you go and play at a club now has changed. It's not the same. I agree, it's not the same. But that doesn't mean it's not, the 60s were any better than what they are now. They quite possibly weren't. It's just the way the music business has evolved and developed is different than what it was. Miami really had a chance to be the San Francisco of the East Coast, but lost its focus. Yeah, that might be true. But yeah, eventually the San Francisco scene also died. But you see, that's the thing. You know, if you go to New York City, and you know, in the 1940s, and you were to walk down 52nd Street, there were jazz clubs all the way down 52nd Street, you know, kind of around the 7th Avenue South area. There were lots of them. I mean, there you can Google photos of 52nd Street in its heyday, and you will see that there's probably 20, 30 jazz clubs all the way along 52nd Street. And that was in its heyday between 1942 and 1947, 48, 50, maybe 52, 53. And then it started to drop off, you know? A lot of those, in fact, if you were to walk down 52nd Street now, you'd never think that an entire genre of music was born right on that street. You wouldn't think it. But it was. Bebop was born on 52nd Street. And it had its heyday right there. But now you walk down it and there's nothing to see. No evidence whatsoever. So they've all gone, you know, all those clubs are gone, they've turned into other things. But bebop is very much alive, very much still being performed, still being played. But the difference is now you find clubs where you can go hear fantastic bebop played by great musicians all over the world now. You know, Blue Note Jazz Club Tokyo, some of the finest musicians in the world play there. And, you know, they'll play authentic Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie bebop. And that place will be absolutely packed every night. Then there's Ronnie Scott's in London, a club of which I'm a member and have been for over 20 years. Again, fantastic place. They have a variety of different jazz styles on, but, you know, Ronnie Scott was a bebopper. Second generation, but he was a bebopper nonetheless. David says, if you're a teenager or in your early 20s in the 70s like me, there was this atmosphere, an air of expectancy that something really good was about to happen. Still waiting. Yeah. You know what happened, David? The 80s. That's what happened. You got to the end of the 1970s and then the 80s happened, and music kind of went for a while. You know, talk to Donald Fagen about the 80s, and he'll be like, yeah, we sat out the 80s, and we were right to do so. Because a lot of 80s music was just pure pants, rubbish. So there we go. The Band on the Wall in Manchester used to be really good for great music. Yep, most certainly did. There's another great Manchester club. There are still some great clubs in Manchester to go to. Not a fan of most of the 80s. Yeah, me neither. I'm glad I sat out the 80s as well. And listened to music strictly from the 40s, 50s, and 70s. All right, guys. It is 20 to 2 in the morning. We've been on for an hour and 8 minutes, and we've had some good chinwag and some good chat about a variety of things. But it is really late here, and I need to go and get some snooze time. Johnny will be on probably in about 20 minutes, actually. I think we've held the fort quite well. Robert Overbeek has just popped in just as we're about to end. So I'm gonna finish actually with Robert's comment here. He says, "You're right, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are great." Yes, they are, my friend. If you want to listen to great contemporary rocking bagpipes, they are the band to go check out. Could not agree more. And you know what? The guys in that band are fantastic. They are hilarious. They're great fun. David says, thanks for keeping us entertained. You're welcome. And Robert, can I just say, mate, I'm glad you came back. Thank you. Thank you for coming back. Appreciate it. But by and large, the conversation that we'll be having on these streams is going to be about music production and songwriting and mixing and mastering and your questions related to those subjects. So long as you are happy with that, you are always welcome on my streams. And occasionally I will do a stream like this where it's just a little bit spontaneous and a little bit chat, and we talked flipping Cornish tin mining, we talked Cornish pasties, we talked a little bit of theology. We've kind of gone around the houses a little bit on this particular stream, but these are going to be the exception rather than the norm. So long as you're happy with that, Robert, then you are always very welcome to come on any of my streams. And feel free to, if you're not already subscribed to my email list, get yourself signed up there. And I will make sure that you get the very best content that I can possibly get out to you. All right, guys and girls. Beatrice is calling me the professor, which is very kind. Thank you very much. No, I'm not a professor. But it's very kind that you think of me in that way. So thank you. All right, guys, I will end the show here, and I will see you guys all around. Please send my apologies to Johnny for not being able to check out his stream, but it's going to be too late for me to watch that, I'm afraid. But thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you all. When are we? We are on Monday, so probably Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified, providing there are no hiccups. So yeah, Wednesday, Songwriting Simplified, 6 p.m. Central Time, me and Johnny Guy over on his channel, I should think. We will have a talking point, I promise. I know we didn't last time, but this time we will have a talking point, because I've got some things that I want to talk about, and I know that Johnny has too. So we will maybe combine talking points, and we'll make one gargantuan talking point around which the show can revolve. All right, guys, take care. Good night.